Okay, we're out here in the garage, and what I said was we were on the last video we were going to clean this up. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not one to sit here and do a lot of little cuts and sit here for hours cleaning up everything. If I can find a quicker and easier way to do that, I'm going to, and I have found a way. This is in consultation with several other people that I've taken classes from in the past, but we're going to use a little simple system that I like using, and it works for me, and so that's all I can speak about. We have this guy with a lot of little places in between some of these tight areas, and where we want to get something in there, and it's sometimes a little hard to get your knife in there, and so we've got a system that I've learned from someone else that we're going to use. Basically what I have is a Dremel, and this is my Dremel 4000. My Dremel 4000 works perfectly. It runs, I don't know the speed, I can't tell the speed here without spending a little extra time. Anyway, I like it because it works really well. I hang it up on a peg in my shop, on a pegboard, and we use these little mandrels like this chucked in it. A mandrel is a shafted tool, it's a rotary tool bit that has a screw at the top, and what we do is to take the screw off, and then we use something like these Scotch-Brite pads. It's just a scuff pad. That's all it is. I cut little squares in there about 1.5 inches to inch and a half on a side. The Scotch-Brite comes in red, green, white, and gray. The gray is really soft. It's good for buffing, as is the white. I don't use the green because the first time I used the green, it left green all over my carving. Not something I really wanted to take off. But anyway, I cut these little things off, poke a hole in the end of them, and I can get 3 of them mounted in here, and it does a really great job for being able to just kind of buff it and burnish it. So I take the mandrel, chuck it in there, tighten up the chuck, and when I turn it on, it spins at a certain rate, and you can adjust that rate on this 4000. It's adjustable, so I can whiz it up way up there. I can get it reeled down fairly slow, and it goes all the way up to where a speed that I really don't like. The reason I don't like a high speed is it has a tendency to grab your carving and whisk it right out of your hand, so I don't use a high speed very often. But let me show you what we're going to do. We're just going to work over this guy, just see if we can get some of these marks off, some of the little fuzzies out of the corners, and make it look a little bit softer. It's just going to look a little better once we do that. Now again, safety first. I always wear safety, and sometimes I wear a shield. That makes it easier, but when I'm wearing the shield, sometimes out here in the garage, it's not as warm as I want it to be, and it can be a little bit cold, and it fogs up in there, especially if you're like me and you wear bifocals. You got to look out of the bottom of your glasses, and if you're looking out of the bottom of this, it gets a little bit fogged up. You can also wear some goggles. I would suggest you wear some kind of shield or goggles, and if you're going to wear a shield, you probably don't have to worry about the dust mask, but if you're wearing goggles, I would suggest wearing dust mask, because this Scotch-Brite is going to send off pieces of it. As it wears down, it'll send off pieces. I had to get a paper towel to wipe the inside of my shield off. As it gets used up, it leaves off little pieces, and those pieces go everywhere. So sometimes they can get in your eyes. Sometimes if you're breathing really hard, they can get it right up in your nostrils, and those are not fun to get out. But anyway, this will take about 3 or 4 minutes, and we'll show the before. See the little fuzzies in there, and we'll show the after when we're done. Here we go. We're going to turn it on. Crank the speed up a little bit. I don't want it too high. I don't want it to get whisked right out of my hand. Okay, I'll turn the speed up just a little bit more. I think we've got it looking a whole lot better. We'll give it the once over here in just a minute, but if you can see how it's softened it up, the edges a little bit, taking care of some of the fuzzies. It's not a magic wand. It's not a panacea. It's not going to take care of all the little issues you have. And I still have some little fuzzies way down here that I can go back and clean up with a knife, but this saves me a lot of time in terms of softening the edges and leaving not quite so rough cuts that I made. You know, a lot of carvers will tell you need to learn to carve clean, and they're absolutely right, but sometimes there's just a limit to how much time you want to put into something, and if you can find sometimes an easier way to do it, it works. This works for me. Try it if you want. If you don't, it's no big deal. I would not recommend using sandpaper on your caricature carvings. It has a tendency to open up the the grains of the wood at the end of the cells of wood, sandpaper has a tendency to flay them open, and that soaks up a lot of paint. This is more burnishing, so it's taking care of the loose stuff that's lying on the top of your carving, and burnishing some of your surfaces to where they'll take paint and stain a little better. You have to be careful on doing this, because if you saw a couple times during the video, I bore down a little bit too hard, and it has a tendency to flip that out of my hand or make this thing bog down. You have to be careful with that, because you don't want to bind up the motor on your machine. And you also have to be careful with holding it in one spot too fast and for too long, because it will burn the wood. It will make it hot and give it dark marks. But this is a way, for me particularly, to get my carving looking a little bit better, and then I'll go through and I'll paint it and I'll finish it up. And before I do that, I'll go back into these little corners that machine can't reach and that Dremel can't reach, and I'll clean up some of these little areas that I want to make look a whole lot better. All right, so we're off the carving table, we're off the whizzer wheel, as I call it, burnishing table, and now we're onto the paint table. So next video we'll start on painting. See you then, and I'm glad you're along for the ride. Thanks for sharing your time with me.